Most people believe they think clearly. In reality, most people react. They confuse speed with intelligence, emotion with insight, and opinion with understanding. Under pressure, their thoughts collapse into impulse. Words spill out unfiltered. Regret follows. This cycle repeats daily, quietly shaping how others perceive them and how much influence their voice carries. This audiobook begins by dismantling that cycle at its root. Thinking smarter is not about being more intelligent. It is about being more regulated. The brain cannot think clearly when the nervous system is overwhelmed. Stress, urgency, fear of judgment, and emotional attachment all hijack cognition. When this happens, reasoning narrows, perspective shrinks, and speech becomes reactive. People say things they do not mean, fail to say what they do mean, or communicate in ways that weaken their position without realizing it. The greatest illusion of modern communication is that thinking happens before speaking. For most people, speaking happens first. Thinking comes later, usually in regret. This is because emotion accelerates speech. When emotion rises, the brain prioritizes expression over accuracy. The goal becomes release, not clarity. This feels satisfying in the moment, but damages credibility over time. Smarter thinking begins with slowing down internally. Not physically slowing life, but slowing mental reaction. Reaction is automatic. Thought is deliberate. Most people never create space between stimulus and response. That space is where intelligence lives. Without it, even smart people sound careless. Pressure is the true test of thinking. Anyone can sound intelligent when relaxed, but influence is built under pressure during disagreement, scrutiny, or uncertainty. This is where most people lose control of their mind. Their thoughts scatter. They chase points emotionally. They over-explain, defend prematurely, or speak in absolutes they later regret. Why does this happen? Because the brain prioritizes safety over accuracy. Under pressure, the survival system takes over. The mind narrows to threat detection. Subtlety disappears. Nuance vanishes. This is why intelligent people can say unintelligent things when stressed. It is not a lack of knowledge. It is a lack of regulation. Think about how many times you've replayed a conversation afterward, realizing what you should have said. That clarity did not appear because you became smarter afterward. It appeared because the pressure was gone. Your nervous system relaxed. Your thinking returned. The intelligence was always there. It was just inaccessible in the moment. Most people try to fix this by rehearsing lines, memorizing phrases, or trying to sound confident. This fails because the problem is not vocabulary. It is state. A chaotic internal state produces chaotic communication, regardless of preparation. Calm clarity produces strong communication even with simple words. Thinking smarter means learning to control internal state before attempting external influence. This is counterintuitive to most people. They believe influence comes from argument, strength, persuasion tactics, or charisma. In reality, influence begins with clarity. Clarity commands attention. Confusion repels it. Another major obstacle to smart thinking is emotional attachment to being right. When ego becomes involved, thinking collapses. The brain shifts from understanding to defending. This is why arguments escalate. Both sides stop listening. Both sides talk past each other. Influence disappears. Smarter thinkers prioritize accuracy over ego. They are willing to pause. They are willing to adjust. They are willing to admit uncertainty. This flexibility is often mistaken for weakness, but it is the foundation of influence. People trust those who are clear more than those who are loud. Another factor that sabotages thinking is urgency. Urgency compresses time. When you feel rushed, your brain cuts corners. It relies on habit, bias, and emotional shortcuts. Slowing down, even slightly, restores access to higher reasoning. This is why calm people seem intelligent. They are not smarter. They are less rushed internally. Language also shapes thinking. Vague language produces vague thought. Emotional language distorts perception. Absolutes reduce nuance. Smarter thinkers use precise internal language. They avoid exaggeration internally before it appears externally. This internal discipline sharpens external communication. Most people think in conclusions rather than processes. They jump to opinions without examining assumptions. This makes their speech brittle. It collapses under challenge. Smarter thinkers examine how they arrived at a thought before expressing it. This makes their words resilient. Another reason people struggle to think clearly is fear of judgment. When you are focused on how you are perceived, your attention turns inward. Self-monitoring increases. This drains cognitive resources. You stop thinking about the topic and start thinking about yourself. This self-consciousness weakens clarity instantly. Influential thinkers shift attention outward. They focus on the subject, the goal, and the interaction, not on how they look. This external focus frees cognitive capacity. Thinking becomes sharper because it is no longer divided. Smarter thinking also requires tolerance for silence. Silence creates space for thought. Most people rush to fill silence because it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort leads to shallow speech. Calm thinkers allow silence. They use it. Silence buys clarity. Another hidden enemy of smart thinking is emotional storytelling. The brain loves narratives. Under pressure, it creates stories about intention, threat, or meaning that are not verified. These stories feel true, but distort reality. Smarter thinkers separate facts from interpretation. This separation stabilizes thinking. The ability to pause internally is the most important skill you will develop in this audiobook. That pause interrupts automatic reaction. It allows breath to slow. It allows thought to organize. It allows choice to replace impulse. This pause does not need to be long. Even a few seconds changes everything. But it must be intentional. Without intention, the mind defaults to habit. Another shift is learning to think in outcomes rather than emotions. Emotion asks, "How do I feel?" Outcome asks, "What is the best result here?" This question alone elevates thinking. It moves the mind from reaction to strategy. Smarter thinking also involves accepting uncertainty. Many people speak prematurely because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. They want closure. They want resolution. But premature certainty weakens credibility. Strong thinkers are comfortable saying less until clarity forms, influence grows. When people feel that your words are considered not impulsive, considered speech signals respect both for the listener and for the truth. This respect builds trust. Another important principle is mental economy. Smarter thinkers conserve mental energy. They do not chase every thought. They do not react to every stimulus. They choose where to engage. This selectivity sharpens influence. Most people believe influence comes from talking more. In reality, it comes from saying the right thing at the right time. This requires restraint. Restraint is a sign of mental strength. Thinking smarter also means being aware of bias. Everyone has bias. The difference is whether you are aware of it. Awareness allows correction. Unaware bias controls behavior silently. As you train clarity, you will notice changes quickly. Conversations feel less draining. Words come easier. You stop replaying interactions afterward. You feel more grounded when speaking. This is not because you became more persuasive overnight. It is because your mind became calmer and more organized. Organization is the foundation of influence. Smarter thinking is not about dominating conversations. It is about guiding them. Guidance feels natural when thought is clear. Over time, you will notice that people listen differently. They interrupt less. They ask more questions. They take your words seriously. This is the effect of clarity. It draws attention without effort. Influence is not force. It is gravity. Clear thinkers create gravity. As this audiobook continues, you will learn how to structure thoughts, translate them into powerful language, speak in ways that carry weight without aggression. But none of that works without this foundation. If you cannot think clearly under pressure, words will fail you. If you can think clearly, words will follow naturally. This is where influence begins. Not with what you say, but with how you think. Most people believe they think first and react second. In reality, the opposite is true. Reaction is automatic. Thought is optional. The human brain is designed to respond quickly to stimuli, not to analyze them carefully. This design kept us alive in dangerous environments, but it creates serious problems in modern communication. When someone challenges you, disagrees with you, or places you under pressure, your mind reacts before it reasons. Words emerge before clarity forms. And once spoken, those words cannot be taken back. Mental clarity is the ability to interrupt this automatic reaction. It is not about suppressing emotion or becoming cold. It is about creating a brief but powerful pause between stimulus and response. In that pause, you regain control of your mind. Without it, even intelligent people speak carelessly. Reaction feels immediate and necessary. Thought feels slow and uncertain. That's why reaction dominates. The brain prefers certainty over accuracy. Reaction provides instant certainty. Thought requires patience. Mental clarity is the discipline of choosing patience over impulse. Most reactive thinking is driven by emotion. Emotion narrows focus. It simplifies reality. It pushes the mind toward extremes. This is why people speak in absolutes under pressure. Always, never, everyone. No one. These words feel powerful but weaken credibility. They reveal emotional thinking. It's not intelligent analysis. Learning to think before reacting begins with recognizing emotional activation. Activation shows up physically. Tight chest, fast breathing, heat in the body, restlessness. These sensations are not signals to speak. They are signals to pause. When you learn to treat activation as a cue for silence instead of speech, clarity becomes possible. The pause does not need to be dramatic. It can be internal. A single breath, a moment of stillness, slight delay before responding. This pause allows the nervous system to settle enough for higher reasoning to return. Without it, the thinking brain is offline. Many people fear pausing because they believe it makes them look weak or unsure. In reality, pausing signals confidence. People associate speed with anxiety and slowness with control. Those who pause appear thoughtful, deliberate, and composed. Influence grows when others sense that your words are chosen, not rushed. Mental clarity also requires learning to separate observation from interpretation. Most people merge the two unconsciously. Someone speaks. The mind immediately assigns meaning, intention, and judgment. This interpretation feels like fact, but it is not. It is a story. Stories trigger emotion. Emotion triggers reaction. Clear. Thinkers learn to identify what is actually happening before deciding what it means. This slows the mind and prevents emotional hijacking. When interpretation is delayed, reaction loses urgency. Another major obstacle to mental clarity is the need to respond perfectly. Fear of saying the wrong thing creates pressure. Pressure accelerates reaction. This is why people blurt out half-formed thoughts. Letting go of perfection reduces pressure. Clarity does not require perfect wording. It requires accurate thinking. Mental clarity also improves when you stop trying to win every interaction. Winning activates ego. Ego narrows perception. When the goal becomes winning instead of understanding, thinking becomes defensive. Defensive thinking is rigid. Rigid thinking collapses under challenge. Clear thinkers prioritize understanding over dominance. They listen fully before responding. Listening is not passive, it is strategic. The more information you gather, the stronger your response becomes. Speaking too early weakens influence. Another source of reactive thinking is identity attachment. When opinions become part of identity, disagreement feels like threat. Threat triggers reaction. Clear thinkers separate ideas from self-worth. They can examine ideas without feeling attacked. This flexibility strengthens thinking. Mental clarity also depends on internal language. The way you talk to yourself shapes how you think. Catastrophic internal language amplifies emotion. Neutral language stabilizes perception. Clear thinkers describe situations accurately without exaggeration. This accuracy keeps emotion proportional. One of the most powerful clarity tools is asking a simple internal question. What matters most here? This question shifts focus from emotion to outcome. It aligns thinking with purpose instead of impulse. Purpose organizes thought. Another important skill is tolerating uncertainty. Reactive thinkers rush to conclusions because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. Clear thinkers allow uncertainty to exist until enough information is available. This patience produces stronger conclusions. Mental clarity also improves when you reduce mental noise. Constant stimulation fragments attention. Fragmented attention weakens thought. Clear thinkers protect their attention. They do not chase every thought. They choose where to focus. This selectivity sharpens influence. The ability to think before reacting also improves with emotional regulation. Calm, breathing, grounded posture, relaxed attention. Physical states support clear thinking. The body and mind are not separate. Regulating the body stabilizes the mind. Another mistake people make is rehearsing responses mentally while others are speaking. This divides attention. You stop listening, react to what you think they will say instead of what they are saying. Clear thinkers stay present. They respond to reality, not anticipation. Clarity also requires letting go of the need to respond to everything. Not every comment deserves a response. Silence can be a strategic choice. Restraint protects clarity. Influence increases when words are selective. As you practice thinking before reacting, conversations begin to change. You speak less, but with more impact. You feel less drained afterward. You stop replaying interactions mentally. This is not because you said everything perfectly. It is because you stayed aligned internally. Mental clarity also reduces anxiety. Anxiety thrives on rushed thinking and imagined outcomes. When thinking slows, anxiety loses fuel. Calm becomes natural. Another shift is learning to think structurally. Instead of jumping between points emotionally, clear thinkers organize thoughts logically. This structure makes speech easier. Right? When thought is organized, words follow naturally. Thinking before reacting also changes how others interact with you. People sense that you are not easily provoked, and they become more measured. They listen more carefully. This feedback loop strengthens influence. This skill takes practice. At first, pausing feels uncomfortable. Silence feels awkward. Over time, it feels natural. The nervous system adapts. Reaction weakens. Clarity strengthens. Eventually, thinking before reacting becomes automatic. You do not force it. You simply respond differently. This is when influence becomes effortless. You stop saying things you regret. You stop speaking from emotion. You stop losing control under pressure. You think first. You speak second. You influence naturally. This is the foundation of speaking better and influencing more. Without clarity, words fail. With clarity, words carry weight. Clear thinking is useless if it never makes it out of your mouth intact. Many people have intelligent thoughts, but lose them the moment they try to speak. Ideas come out scattered, softened, or distorted. Meaning gets diluted. Authority disappears. This is not because they lack intelligence. It is because translating thought into language is a skill, and like all skills, it must be trained. Most communication problems are not caused by a lack of ideas, but by a lack of structure. Thoughts exist internally as impressions, emotions, and fragments. Language requires order. When you speak without organizing thought, you force the listener to do the work for you. Most people will not. They disengage. Influence is lost. Powerful language begins before speech. It begins with deciding what you actually want to say. Many people speak while still figuring out their point. This creates rambling, contradictions, and unnecessary explanations. Clear communicators pause internally first. They let the thought settle. Then they speak. The fear that silence creates is what pushes people to talk prematurely. Silence feels risky. It feels like exposure. But silence is where clarity forms. When you tolerate silence internally, your words become sharper externally. Every strong communicator understands this, instinctively. Another major reason thoughts fail to translate is emotional leakage. Emotion distorts language. It adds excess words. It softens conviction. It introduces defensiveness. When emotion is high, clarity drops. This is why calm is a prerequisite for powerful speech. Calm strips language down to its essentials. Clear language is economical. It does not waste words. It does not decorate unnecessarily. It communicates meaning efficiently. People trust speakers who respect their attention. Rambling signals uncertainty. Precision signals confidence. Most people hide uncertainty behind verbosity. They talk more to cover doubt. This creates the opposite effect. The more you talk without structure, the less authority you project. Speaking less with intention is one of the fastest ways to increase influence. Another obstacle to clear language is fear of being misunderstood. This fear leads to over-explaining. Over-explaining weakens messages. It signals that you do not trust your words to stand on their own. Clear communicators state their point once, calmly, and then stop. The structure of powerful language is simple but rarely practiced. You identify the point. You state it directly. You support it briefly, if necessary. Then you stop. Anything beyond that often reduces impact. Emotionally driven speakers reverse this order. They explain first. They justify. They defend. The point gets buried. Listeners lose track. Influence disappears. Clear language also avoids unnecessary qualifiers. Words like just, kind of, maybe, I think, and I feel like soften statements unnecessarily. They may feel polite, but they weaken authority. Removing them sharpens speech immediately. This does not mean becoming aggressive. It means becoming precise. Precision is respectful. It honors reality instead of hiding behind vagueness. Another important principle is speaking from observation rather than accusation. Observational language is harder to argue with. It keeps conversations grounded. Accusatory language triggers defensiveness. Defensive conversations go nowhere. Clear communicators describe what is happening, not what they assume it means. This keeps dialogue open and influence intact. Tone remains critical. The same sentence can sound confident or insecure depending on delivery. Calm tone stabilizes meaning. Rushed tone distorts it. When you slow down, your words land with more weight. Pacing also affects clarity. Speaking too fast overwhelms the listener. Speaking too slow feels unnatural. The goal is deliberate pacing, not rushed, not exaggerated. This pacing gives the listener time to process. Another key element is sentence completion. Many people trail off at the end of sentences. This signals doubt. Ending sentences cleanly signals confidence. You do not need to fill silence afterward. Let your words land. Clear communicators also understand the power of simplicity. Complex language does not equal intelligence. Simplicity communicates mastery. When you can express a complex idea simply, people trust your understanding. Fear of sounding simple often leads people to complicate language unnecessarily. This creates distance. Influence grows when others understand you easily. Another important shift is speaking from intention instead of reaction. Reaction produces defensive language. Intention produces directional language. Before speaking, clear communicators know why they are speaking. To clarify, to set a boundary, to influence, to inform. This intention shapes wording naturally. Powerful language also avoids emotional exaggeration. Words like always, never, everyone, and no one feel intense but weaken credibility. Clear thinkers speak accurately, not dramatically. Accuracy builds trust. Another mistake people make is stacking points emotionally. They bring up multiple issues at once. This overwhelms the listener and weakens focus. Clear communicators address one point at a time. This focus increases influence. Listening also affects language. If you are not fully listening, your response will miss the mark. Missed responses weaken credibility. Clear communicators listen completely before speaking. This makes their words feel relevant and grounded. Another factor is internal permission. Many people hesitate because they do not feel entitled to speak clearly. They soften language to avoid appearing confident. This self-sabotage is learned, not natural. Giving yourself permission to speak plainly removes hesitation. Clear language also benefits from emotional neutrality. Neutral does not mean cold. It means controlled. When emotion is controlled, words remain clean. Clean words carry authority. As you practice translating thought into language, you will notice something change. You stop searching for words. They arrive more easily. This is because clarity upstream simplifies expression downstream. You will also notice that conversations become easier. People understand you faster. They ask fewer clarifying questions. This is a sign that your language is landing cleanly. Influence grows when others feel oriented by your words instead of confused by them. Orientation is power. It gives direction to interaction. Another powerful habit is allowing others to respond before adding more. Many people continue talking out of anxiety. Clear communicators speak, then listen. This balance creates mutual respect. Over time, your speech becomes more economical. You say more with less. This economy signals confidence and competence. You stop rambling. You stop softening unnecessarily. You stop losing your point mid-sentence. Your thoughts translate cleanly. Your words land clearly. Your influence grows naturally. This is not performance. This is alignment between thought and speech. And when thought and speech align, people listen. Authority is one of the most misunderstood qualities in communication. Many people believe authority comes from force, volume, dominance, or intensity. They assume that to be taken seriously, they must speak louder, firmer, or more aggressively. This belief creates a false choice between being respected and being liked. In reality, true authority is neither loud nor hostile. It is calm, grounded, and unmistakable. Authority is not something you perform. It is something others feel when your words, tone, and presence are aligned. Aggression is driven by insecurity. Authority is driven by certainty. Aggression pushes. Authority stands. This distinction is subtle but powerful. When people sense aggression, they brace themselves. Defensiveness rises. Resistance appears. When people sense authority, they listen. Not because they are forced to, because the communication feels stable and trustworthy. Most people who struggle with authority either overcorrect or undercorrect. They become overly aggressive to avoid being ignored, or overly passive to avoid conflict. Both responses weaken influence. Authority exists in the middle. It is firm without hostility and calm without submission. Speaking with authority begins internally. If you are unsure of your position, your voice will reflect that uncertainty, no matter how confident you try to sound. Authority requires internal alignment. You must believe in what you are saying enough to stand behind it calmly. This belief does not require arrogance. It requires clarity. Many people confuse emotional intensity with conviction. They believe passion makes them persuasive. In reality, emotional intensity often signals lack of control. Conviction does not need intensity. Conviction is steady. It does not rush. It does not escalate unnecessarily. It does not argue desperately. The nervous system plays a critical role here. When you feel threatened or insecure, your body prepares for defense. This preparation leaks into tone, posture, and speech. To speak with authority, your nervous system must be regulated. Regulation creates steadiness. Steadiness communicates power. One of the clearest signals of authority is pace. Aggressive speakers rush or interrupt. Passive speakers hesitate or trail off. Authoritative speakers set the pace. They speak neither hurriedly nor slowly. They move at a rhythm that feels deliberate. This rhythm signals control. Another signal is volume. Authority does not require loudness. In fact, consistent moderate volume is more commanding than volume spikes. Sudden increases in volume signal loss of control. Steady volume signals command of self. Tone is equally important. Authority lives in tone more than words. A calm, grounded tone communicates certainty even when delivering disagreement. A sharp or defensive tone undermines authority instantly. People respond emotionally to tone before they process content. Another crucial factor is sentence completion. Many people soften their authority by trailing off at the end of sentences. This happens unconsciously when confidence wavers. Completing sentences cleanly, then stopping, signals certainty. Silence after a statement amplifies authority. Authority also comes from restraint. Saying less often carries more weight than saying more. When you speak selectively, people pay attention. When you speak constantly, your words blend into noise. Influence grows when speech is intentional. Another common mistake is over-explaining to sound reasonable. Over-explaining is driven by fear of rejection or misunderstanding. It weakens authority because it signals doubt. Authoritative speakers trust their words to stand on their own. This does not mean refusing to explain when clarity is needed. It means explaining once, clearly, without emotional urgency. Then stopping. Authority also requires comfort with disagreement. Many people soften their language excessively to avoid pushback. This creates ambiguity. Ambiguity weakens authority. Clear communicators state their position calmly and allow disagreement without becoming defensive. Defensiveness is one of the fastest ways to lose authority. Defensiveness signals that your position is fragile. Authority comes from stability. You can acknowledge disagreement without retreating or escalating. Another critical shift is learning to separate firmness from harshness. Firmness is clarity. Harshness is emotion. Firmness communicates boundaries without hostility. Harshness creates resistance. Firm language is direct and respectful. It does not insult. It does not accuse. It states reality plainly. This plainness carries authority because it removes drama. Authority also shows in how you handle challenges. When someone questions you, do not rush to defend. Pause, consider, respond calmly. This pause communicates confidence. It shows you are not threatened by scrutiny. Many people believe authority requires having all the answers. In reality, authority grows when you are comfortable admitting what you do not know. Pretending to know everything creates fragility. Honest acknowledgement creates trust. Another factor is emotional neutrality. Authority is not emotionally reactive. When emotions spike, authority drops. Calm under pressure is interpreted as strength universally. Authority also depends on internal permission. Many people unconsciously feel they do not have the right to speak firmly. This belief undermines authority regardless of skill. Giving yourself permission to speak plainly removes hesitation. Another subtle signal is posture. A grounded posture communicates stability. Excessive movement, fidgeting, or tension signals anxiety. Authority is felt when the body appears at ease with itself. Eye contact also matters. Avoidance signals submission. Aggressive staring signals threat. Calm. Steady eye contact communicates confidence and presence. Authority also grows when you stop trying to control how others feel. Trying to manage emotions makes you reactive. Letting others react freely keeps you grounded. Another powerful principle is consistency. Authority is not built in one conversation. It is built through repeated calm responses. Consistency trains others how to treat you. People test boundaries instinctively. When your responses are calm and firm every time, testing stops. Authority becomes assumed. Authority also means knowing when not to speak. Silence can be more powerful than argument. When you do not engage in unnecessary debates, your words gain value. Another common mistake is using excessive politeness to soften authority. Politeness is useful, but when overused, it becomes avoidance. Respectful directness is more authoritative than excessive courtesy. Authority does not seek approval. It seeks clarity. When you stop trying to be liked, your communication becomes cleaner. Ironically, respect often increases. Speaking with authority without aggression also requires emotional maturity. You must tolerate discomfort without reacting. This tolerance is what separates authority from dominance. Dominance seeks control over others. Authority reflects control over self. Over time, speaking this way changes how people respond to you. Interruptions decrease. Dismissal decreases. Conversations become more focused. You are taken seriously without effort. You also feel different internally. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop replaying conversations. You trust your voice. Authority becomes natural, not forced. You do not push. You do not retreat. You stand. Your words are calm. Your tone is steady. Your presence is clear. This is authority without aggression. And once you embody it, influence becomes effortless. Most people misunderstand persuasion. They think persuasion means convincing, pushing, pressuring, or cleverly arguing someone into agreement. This belief creates resistance before a word is even spoken. People instinctively guard against manipulation. The moment they feel pushed, their defenses rise. Influence disappears. True persuasion works in the opposite direction. It feels natural, calm, and almost effortless. People believe they arrived at the conclusion themselves. Manipulation relies on control. Persuasion relies on clarity. Manipulation hides intent. Persuasion reveals value. Manipulation pressures emotion. Persuasion aligns understanding. The difference is not subtle, and people sense it immediately. Even if they cannot explain why, the foundation of persuasion is trust. Without trust, no amount of logic, charm, or repetition will work. Trust is built through consistency, emotional regulation, and respect for autonomy. When people feel respected, they listen. When they feel controlled, they resist. Most attempts at persuasion fail because the speaker is more focused on their outcome than the other person's experience. This creates urgency. Urgency creates pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Persuasive communicators remove urgency. They slow down. They allow space. They let the conversation breathe. Another misunderstanding is the belief that persuasion requires superior arguments. In reality, persuasion rarely happens at the level of argument. It happens at the level of perception. How someone feels during a conversation determines whether they are open or closed. Calm, respectful interactions keep people open. Emotional intensity closes them. People are persuaded when they feel understood. Not agreed with, understood. Feeling understood reduces defensiveness. Defensiveness blocks influence. This is why listening is more persuasive than speaking. When people feel heard, they lower their guard. Persuasive communicators ask more than they tell. Questions guide thinking without forcing conclusions. A good question invites reflection. A forced statement invites resistance. Questions allow people to explore ideas internally. Internal conclusions feel safer than external pressure. Another critical principle is alignment. People are persuaded when new ideas align with their existing values, identity, or goals. When persuasion threatens identity, it fails. Fearless persuaders frame ideas in ways that connect to what already matters to the listener. This requires empathy, not sympathy. Empathy is understanding perspective. Sympathy is emotional involvement. Persuasion needs understanding, not emotional absorption. When you understand what someone values, you can communicate in a way that resonates. Persuasion also fails when speakers try to win immediately. Immediate conversion is rare. Influence often unfolds over time. Seeds planted calmly grow later. Forcing agreement now often destroys the chance of agreement later. Another mistake is overwhelming people with information. Too many points create confusion. Confusion creates disengagement. Persuasive communication is selective. It highlights what matters most and leaves the rest unsaid. Simplicity is persuasive. Complexity feels impressive, but weakens influence. When people understand easily, they trust more. Trust increases openness. Tone remains critical. A calm, grounded tone communicates confidence without threat. Threat shuts down persuasion instantly. Even correct arguments fail when delivered with emotional pressure. Another powerful element is allowing disagreement. When people feel allowed to disagree, they feel safe. Safety increases openness. Ironically, giving people permission to disagree often makes them more receptive. Persuasion also requires patience with resistance. Resistance is not rejection. It is uncertainty. Reacting defensively to resistance escalates it. Calm acknowledgement diffuses it. Many people mistake repetition for persuasion. Repeating the same point louder or more emotionally does not increase influence. It increases annoyance. Persuasive communicators adjust approach, not volume. Another key factor is credibility. Credibility is built through consistency, not credentials. When words and actions align over time, influence grows naturally. Inconsistency weakens persuasion regardless of argument strength. Persuasion without manipulation also means letting go of outcome attachment. When you are emotionally attached to convincing someone, pressure leaks into communication. Letting go of outcome allows you to stay present, calm, and adaptive. Influential communicators also know when not to persuade. Some moments require information, not influence. Some conversations require boundaries, not persuasion. Knowing the difference preserves credibility. Another important principle is framing. How something is presented matters more than what is presented. Framing shapes perception. Calm, neutral framing keeps people open. Emotional framing triggers bias. Persuasion also benefits from timing. The same message delivered at the wrong time fails. Calm communicators wait for moments of openness. They do not force conversations during emotional peaks. Body language supports persuasion silently. Open posture. Steady eye contact. Relaxed stillness. These signals communicate safety and confidence. When the body feels safe, the mind listens. Another overlooked factor is self-respect. People are more influenced by those who respect themselves. Self-respect shows in boundaries, tone, and restraint. Over-accommodation weakens influence. Persuasion without manipulation also means transparency. Hidden agendas are sensed even if not articulated. Transparency builds trust. Trust enables influence. As you practice this approach, conversations change. People push back less. They ask more questions. They reflect instead of react. This is influence at work. You stop arguing. You stop convincing. You start guiding. Your presence becomes persuasive. Your clarity becomes influential. Your calm becomes magnetic. This is persuasion without manipulation, and it lasts. Disagreement is where most people lose influence. Not because they are wrong, but because resistance triggers emotion. The moment someone pushes back, challenges an idea, or disagrees openly, the nervous system reacts. Heart rate increases. Thoughts accelerate. The urge to defend appears. This is the moment when intelligence often collapses into impulse. Influence is not lost because of disagreement. It is lost because of how disagreement is handled. Resistance is not rejection. It is uncertainty expressing itself. When people resist, they are not necessarily opposing you. They are protecting themselves. Fearless communicators understand this and respond accordingly. They do not attack resistance. They stabilize it. Most people see resistance as a problem to overcome. This mindset creates pressure. Pressure invites defensiveness. Defensiveness escalates conflict. Clear communicators see resistance as information. It reveals concerns, values, and fears. When you treat resistance as data instead of opposition, influence increases. One of the biggest mistakes people make during disagreement is responding too quickly. Speed is often driven by anxiety. Anxiety creates reactive language. Reactive language escalates tension. Calm communicators slow the interaction down intentionally. Slowing down removes urgency. Removing urgency restores clarity. Another mistake is arguing the surface point instead of addressing the underlying concern. Resistance often hides something deeper. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of uncertainty. When you argue surface points, resistance hardens. When you acknowledge underlying concerns, resistance softens. Handling disagreement begins with regulation. If your nervous system is activated, your thinking narrows. This is why calm is non-negotiable. Calm keeps the thinking brain online. Calm allows you to respond instead of react. Disagreement also triggers ego. Ego wants to be right. Ego wants to win. When ego drives communication, influence disappears. Winning an argument is different from influencing someone. Arguments end conversations. Influence extends them. Clear communicators prioritize understanding over winning. They listened fully before responding. Listening is not agreement. It is information gathering. The more you understand, the stronger your response becomes. Another critical skill is acknowledging without conceding. Many people fear acknowledgement because they believe it equals surrender. In reality, acknowledgement reduces defensiveness without weakening your position. You can acknowledge perspective without abandoning your own. Tone matters deeply during disagreement. A calm tone communicates confidence. A sharp or defensive tone signals threat. Threat shuts down dialogue. Calm keeps it open. Another common error is over-explaining. Over-explaining is driven by fear of being misunderstood. It weakens influence because it signals insecurity. Clear communicators explain once, clearly, then stop. When resistance persists, questions become more powerful than statements. Questions invite reflection. Statements invite rebuttal. The right question can dissolve resistance without force. Handling disagreement also requires comfort with silence. Silence allows emotion to settle. It also forces others to process their own words. Fearful communicators rush to fill silence. Fearless communicators let it work. Another powerful principle is choosing what not to respond to. Not every comment requires engagement. Some resistance fades when ignored calmly. Discernment protects influence. Disagreement often escalates because people personalize it. They feel attacked. This interpretation triggers defensiveness. Clear communicators separate ideas from identity. Disagreement about ideas is not a threat to self-worth. Another key shift is refusing to argue hypotheticals emotionally. Hypotheticals inflate fear. They pull conversations into imagined scenarios. Calm communicators redirect toward reality and facts. Resistance also increases when people feel unheard. Even if you disagree, letting someone fully express themselves reduces their need to push. Being heard satisfies the nervous system. Handling disagreement effectively also means managing your internal dialogue. Catastrophic internal narratives amplify fear. Neutral internal language stabilizes perception. Another mistake is trying to persuade when the other person is emotionally activated. Emotion blocks reasoning. Calm communicators wait for emotion to settle before attempting influence. Disagreement in groups adds another layer. Social dynamics increase pressure. Fear of embarrassment or judgment can trigger reaction. Clear communicators ground themselves internally and speak deliberately. This steadiness often earns respect. Another important skill is reframing disagreement as collaboration. Instead of positioning yourself against the other person, you position yourself alongside the problem. This reduces defensiveness and increases openness. Handling resistance also requires patience. Influence rarely happens instantly. Seeds planted calmly often grow later. Forcing agreement destroys long-term influence. Another powerful principle is consistency. If you respond calmly every time, resistance loses leverage. Inconsistency invites testing. Clear communicators also know when to disengage. Not all resistance is productive. Ending a conversation calmly preserves authority. As you practice handling disagreement this way, you will notice something change. Resistance feels less threatening. Conversations feel more manageable. Confidence grows quietly. You stop fearing pushback. You stop defending reflexively. You stay centered. Disagreement becomes dialogue. Resistance becomes information. Influence becomes natural. This is how you handle disagreement without losing clarity or control. Not by overpowering, but by staying grounded. Influence does not live in speeches, debates, or dramatic moments alone. It lives in everyday interactions where small decisions quietly shape how people perceive you. At work, influence shows up in meetings, emails, negotiations, and moments of disagreement. In relationships, it appears in how needs are expressed, boundaries are held, and conflicts are resolved. In social situations, influence is felt in presence, tone, and the way others naturally respond to you. Most people underestimate how much influence is built or lost in these ordinary moments. In professional environments, influence is often confused with authority or position. Titles may grant temporary compliance, but they do not create lasting influence. Real influence at work comes from clarity, consistency, and emotional regulation. People follow those who make situations feel more stable, not more chaotic. When you speak calmly under pressure, others trust your judgment more. When you react emotionally, even valid points lose weight. One of the biggest mistakes people make at work is staying silent too long. They avoid confrontation to keep the peace. Over time, silence becomes expectation. Others begin to overlook them, interrupt them, or assign them less importance. Influence erodes quietly. Speaking up early and calmly prevents this. Early expression feels uncomfortable, but it protects long-term respect. Influence at work also depends on how you handle disagreement. Emotional disagreement damages credibility. Calm disagreement strengthens it. When you can challenge ideas without challenging people, you signal maturity and confidence. This makes others more willing to engage with you. Another key factor in professional influence is reliability. Saying what you mean and following through consistently builds trust. Inconsistency weakens influence more than lack of intelligence ever could. People listen to those whose words align with their actions. Tone plays a powerful role in workplace influence. Neutral, calm tone communicates competence. Excessive emotion, positive or negative, creates uncertainty. People trust stability. Stability creates influence. Influence also shows in how you listen. Listening without interrupting, without rehearsing responses, and without defensiveness makes others feel valued. Feeling valued increases openness. Openness increases influence. In relationships, influence is often misunderstood as control. Healthy influence does not force outcomes. It shapes dynamics through clarity, respect, and boundaries. When you express needs calmly and consistently, others learn how to relate to you. Avoidance creates confusion. Confusion creates resentment. Many people fear that speaking honestly in relationships will create conflict. In reality, unspoken resentment creates far more damage. Calm, direct communication protects connection. Silence erodes it. Influence in relationships also requires emotional regulation. Emotional reactions escalate conflict. Calm responses de-escalate it. When one person stays grounded, the dynamic shifts. Regulation becomes contagious. Another mistake people make in relationships is over-accommodation. Over-accommodation feels generous, but creates imbalance. Imbalance breeds resentment. Influence weakens when self-respect is compromised. Calm boundaries protect both self-respect and connection. Influence also grows when you stop trying to be understood perfectly. Seeking perfect understanding creates pressure. Pressure distorts communication. Clear expression without attachment to immediate agreement is far more effective. In social situations, influence often appears subtle. It shows up in how comfortable others feel around you. Comfort creates openness. Openness creates connection. Connection creates influence. People who are emotionally regulated make others feel safe. Safety draws attention. Attention creates influence. This is why calm individuals often become informal leaders in groups. Social influence is not about talking the most. It is about timing, tone, and presence. Saying the right thing at the right moment carries more weight than constant commentary. Another powerful element of influence is consistency across contexts. When you communicate clearly at work, but avoid conflict in relationships, influence becomes fragmented. Consistency trains others to trust your presence everywhere. Influence also grows when you stop chasing approval. Approval seeking creates reactive communication. Reactive communication weakens influence. When you express yourself without needing validation, your words carry more weight. Another important shift is letting go of outcome attachment. When you need others to respond a certain way, pressure leaks into your communication. Calm detachment allows you to stay present and persuasive. Influence also depends on emotional containment. You allow others to feel without absorbing their emotion. This keeps you grounded and clear. Absorbing emotion weakens influence by destabilizing your internal state. In work, relationships, and social settings, people test boundaries unconsciously. They interrupt, dismiss, or push limits slightly. How you respond determines future behavior. Calm, consistent responses stop testing. Inconsistent responses invite more. Influence also shows in how you handle mistakes. Owning mistakes calmly builds credibility. Defensiveness damages it. People trust those who can acknowledge errors without collapsing. Another key factor is restraint. Restraint signals confidence. Saying less, but with intention, increases influence. Overspeaking often signals insecurity. Influence also benefits from clarity of values. When you know what matters to you, decisions become easier. Ease communicates confidence. Confidence attracts trust. In group settings, influence increases when you do not compete for attention. Calm presence often stands out more than loud behavior. Others begin to defer naturally. Influence also grows through predictability. Predictability does not mean boring. It means stable. People relax when they know what to expect from you. Relaxation increases receptivity. Another powerful aspect of influence is emotional neutrality during tension. When tension rises and you remain calm, others instinctively look to you. Calm becomes a reference point. Influence in daily life is cumulative. Each interaction reinforces or weakens it. Small moments matter more than dramatic ones. As you practice thinking smarter and speaking better across contexts, something shifts. You stop feeling invisible. You stop feeling misunderstood. You stop feeling reactive. You begin to notice people listening differently. Interruptions decrease. Engagement increases. Respect becomes more consistent. This is not because you dominate. It is because you stabilize. Influence grows when people trust your presence. Trust grows when your communication is calm, clear, and consistent. You no longer force influence. You embody it. This is what influence looks like in real life. Not manipulation. It's not control, but quiet authority that works everywhere you go. Mental sharpness is not intelligence in the traditional sense. It is not about having more knowledge, faster thinking, or better arguments. Mental sharpness is the ability to remain clear when conditions are unclear. It is the capacity to stay oriented when others become reactive, emotional, or chaotic. Most people lose sharpness the moment pressure appears. Their thinking narrows. Their perception distorts. Their communication weakens. The goal is not to eliminate pressure, but to remain sharp within it. Mental sharpness begins with internal stability. When your internal state is stable, external chaos loses power. You stop being pulled into emotional currents. You observe instead of react. This observation creates distance. Distance restores clarity. Clarity restores control. Most people believe sharpness means speed. They admire quick responses and instant comebacks. In reality, speed often signals reactivity. Sharp thinkers are not rushed. They are deliberate. They allow moments to unfold before responding. This patience is mistaken for slowness by reactive people. But it is actually precision. Pressure collapses thinking because it creates urgency. Urgency compresses attention. When attention compresses, perception becomes narrow. You miss context. You miss nuance. You miss opportunity. Mentally sharp individuals resist urgency internally, even when the situation is urgent externally. This resistance protects cognition. The ability to stay sharp in any situation depends heavily on nervous system regulation. A dysregulated nervous system cannot think clearly. It prioritizes survival, not accuracy. Calm regulation keeps the higher brain engaged. This is why emotional regulation is not a soft skill. It is a cognitive advantage. Another factor that dulls sharpness is over-identification. When you identify too strongly with outcomes, opinions, or roles, your thinking becomes rigid. Rigidity reduces adaptability. Sharp thinkers remain flexible. They are not attached to being right. They are attached to seeing clearly. Mental sharpness also requires tolerance for ambiguity. Uncertainty makes most people uncomfortable. They rush to conclusions to escape discomfort. Sharp thinkers allow uncertainty to exist. They gather information. They wait. This patience produces better judgment. Another obstacle to sharpness is internal noise. Constant internal commentary fragments attention. Sharp thinkers reduce internal chatter. They simplify internal language. This mental quiet allows perception to sharpen. Mental sharpness also improves when you learn to shift perspective intentionally. Instead of reacting from a single viewpoint, you consider multiple angles. This does not mean indecision. It means depth. Depth strengthens decisions. Another important skill is emotional containment. You allow emotion to exist without letting it dictate behavior. Emotion no longer hijacks thinking. It becomes data instead of command. This separation is critical for sharpness under pressure. Sharp thinkers also understand timing. They know when to speak and when to remain silent. Silence is not emptiness. It is strategic space. Silence allows clarity to form and prevents unnecessary commitment. Another key element is situational awareness. Mentally sharp individuals are aware not only of what is being said, but of what is happening beneath the surface. Tone, body language, pacing, and emotional shifts provide information. This awareness informs response. Mental sharpness also involves energy management. Fatigue dulls cognition. Emotional exhaustion reduces clarity. Sharp thinkers respect their limits. They do not force sharpness when depleted. They recover deliberately. Another common mistake is trying to multitask mentally during conversations. Divided attention weakens perception. Sharp thinkers focus fully. This focus sharpens understanding and improves response quality. Mental sharpness also improves when you stop internal rehearsing. Rehearsing future responses pulls attention away from the present moment. Sharp thinkers stay present. They respond to what is actually happening, not what they imagine will happen. Another critical shift is learning to slow internal pace, even when external pace is fast. You can move quickly externally while remaining calm internally. This internal calm is what keeps thinking sharp. Sharp thinkers also avoid emotional storytelling. They separate facts from interpretation. This separation prevents distortion. When reality is seen clearly, decisions improve. Another factor is detachment from ego. Ego reacts to threat. Ego defends identity. Ego clouds perception. Sharp thinkers keep ego quiet. This allows them to adapt without feeling diminished. Mental sharpness also benefits from physical grounding. Awareness of posture, breath, and physical sensation anchors attention. This grounding prevents mental drift. Another powerful skill is reframing challenges as information. When challenges are seen as threats, thinking narrows. When seen as information, thinking expands. Perspective determines cognition. Sharp thinkers also know when to disengage mentally. Not every situation deserves full analysis. Conservation of cognitive resources preserves sharpness for what matters. Over time, mental sharpness becomes habitual. You no longer need to remind yourself to slow down. Regulation becomes automatic. Clarity becomes default. This does not mean you never feel emotion. It means emotion no longer controls thinking. You experience emotion without being driven by it. As mental sharpness stabilizes, communication improves naturally. Words come easier. Decisions feel clearer. Confidence grows quietly. You stop feeling overwhelmed. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling mentally scattered. You feel present. You feel oriented. You feel capable. Mental sharpness is not about brilliance. It is about clarity under pressure. And once you develop it, it becomes a permanent advantage. There is a moment when influence stops feeling like something you are trying to do and starts feeling like something that simply happens around you. You are not louder. You are not more aggressive. You are not performing confidence. Yet people listen. They pause when you speak. They consider your words carefully. They respond differently. This moment marks the final shift, when thinking smarter and speaking better becomes who you are, not something you practice. The person others listen to without question is not the most intelligent in the room. They are not the most experienced or the most dominant. They are the most clear. Clarity creates gravity. People are drawn to it instinctively because clarity feels safe in a chaotic world. Most people talk to be heard. Influential people speak to orient. When your words bring structure, others relax. When others relax, they listen. This is the foundation of effortless influence. Listening without question does not mean blind agreement. It means attention. It means seriousness. It means your words are given space instead of being dismissed or rushed past. This level of influence cannot be demanded. It can only be earned through consistency. Consistency is what turns skills into identity. Anyone can sound clear once. Anyone can stay calm occasionally. But the person others trust is consistent under pressure, disagreement, and uncertainty. Their behavior does not change drastically based on emotion. This stability makes them reliable. Reliability is the core of influence. People listen to those they trust to be grounded. Grounded people do not overreact. They do not chase validation. They do not collapse under pressure. Their responses feel measured and thoughtful. This does not mean they are emotionless. It means emotion no longer drives their behavior. Emotion becomes something they experience, not something they obey. The final shift happens when you stop managing impressions and start managing alignment. Alignment between thought, speech, and action creates authenticity. Authenticity is magnetic. People sense it immediately. Most people lose influence because their internal state and external expression are misaligned. They think one thing, say another, and feel something else entirely. This creates confusion. Confusion weakens trust. When thought, speech, and behavior align, communication becomes clean. Clean communication is easy to follow. Easy to follow communication invites trust. Trust invites attention. Another reason people listen without question is predictability. Predictability does not mean boring. It means stable. People know what to expect from you. They know you will not explode emotionally. They know you will not disappear under pressure. This consistency reduces uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty increases influence. The person others listen to also knows when not to speak. Silence becomes a tool rather than a weakness. When you speak selectively, your words carry weight. When you speak constantly, they fade into noise. Restraint is one of the most powerful signals of authority. It shows that you are not driven by impulse. It shows confidence in your presence. People listen because they know you will not waste their attention. Another key shift is letting go of the need to persuade everyone. The moment you stop trying to convince, your communication becomes more persuasive. Pressure disappears. Calm replaces urgency. People feel free to think rather than defend. The person others listen to understands that influence is not control. It is orientation. You do not force people to move. You show them where to look. When people see clearly, they move willingly. This requires humility. Not false humility, but real openness. You do not need to be right all the time. You need to be clear. Admitting uncertainty when appropriate builds credibility. Pretending certainty destroys it. Another defining trait is emotional containment. When situations escalate, you remain steady. Others look to you instinctively. Calm becomes leadership without announcement. This is why influential people often become informal leaders, even without titles. People gravitate toward those who make situations feel manageable. The person others listen to without question also respects boundaries, both their own and others. They do not overshare. They do not intrude. They do not over-accommodate. This balance communicates self-respect. Self-respect attracts respect. Another subtle factor is how you handle mistakes. When you make a mistake and acknowledge it calmly, trust increases. Defensiveness erodes influence. Ownership strengthens it. Influence also grows when you stop rehearsing conversations internally. Rehearsal signals fear. Presence signals confidence. When you trust yourself to respond in the moment, your communication becomes more natural and powerful. The final shift also involves identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to communicate well. You see yourself as someone who is clear. Identity shapes behavior automatically. When identity changes, effort decreases. This does not mean growth stops. It means growth becomes integrated. You refine rather than struggle. Another defining quality is patience. Influential people are patient with others and with outcomes. They do not rush understanding. They do not force conclusions. This patience signals confidence in process. The person others listen to also understands power dynamics, but does not obsess over them. They do not compete for dominance. They let presence speak. Dominance seeks control over others. Influence reflects control over self. Self-control always outlasts dominance. As you embody this way of being, conversations change. You are interrupted less. People wait for your response. Disagreement becomes dialogue instead of conflict. You also change internally. Anxiety decreases. Rumination fades. You stop replaying conversations. You trust yourself to handle future interactions. Fear disappears not because challenges stop appearing, but because you are no longer intimidated by them. You think clearly. You speak precisely. You influence naturally. This is not a performance. It is a state. The person others listen to, without question, is not louder than the room. They are clearer than the noise. They do not chase attention. Attention settles on them. They do not force respect. Respect emerges naturally. This is the final result of thinking smarter, speaking better, and influencing more. Not manipulation. Not dominance. Not control. Clarity.com/presence. And once you reach this state, influence is no longer something you seek. It is something you carry.